Deception is something that we have not talked much about. Enterprise networks are increasingly compromised, and traditional security just isn't cutting it, especially with AI-driven threats.
For the longest time, we have restricted ourselves to defending the perimeter and assuming that that's good enough to keep the enterprises safe. The problem is that the rate at which people can cross those boundaries and come inside your enterprise is increasing at an alarming rate. And bad actors have actually weaponized AI. It's not like the tools of today that protect the perimeter are bad. They're excellent tools and they're getting better. But there are too many ways in.
You make the assumption that the assumed breach is the new normal. Talk to me a little bit about what the emerging trends or shift in cybersecurity strategy that you see is needed to address this particular mindset.
So this assumed compromise, which is a word that I use because breach has a lot of semantics. Nobody is safe. So its size is immaterial to the need for protection. So if you're assuming that the attacker is going to be inside and going to reach machine one, then the question is, how do you find these attackers and bad actors quickly and precisely so that you can conduct the enterprise's business? Our job is to intercept that quickly and precisely as early as possible. So we reduce dwell time and remedy the situation.
Hello, and welcome to the Security Strategist podcast by EM360 Tech, where we have a weekly conversation with people impacting the enterprise tech landscape. My name is Chris Steffen. I'm the Vice President of Security Research at Enterprise Management Associates, and I'll be your host for today's podcast. Among many other things, I cover the security space and all the other stuff that's in it. And EMA, Enterprise Management Associates, is an analyst firm that examines how companies manage their IT infrastructure from the data center to the user environment and into the cloud. Today, I am joined by my friend, and trust me when I say this, the conversations that we have had before this podcast is what we should have recorded for this podcast. It was outstanding. I am proud to call him my friend. Ram is the founder and chairman and CEO of Acalvio. And then we'll be talking about the evolving challenges in the enterprise network or the enterprise cybersecurity space as networks are more often assumed to be compromised. We'll talk and explore the new trends that address this reality and how solutions like deception technology, again, one of my more favorite things to talk about, are changing proactive defensive strategies. All of that. Ram, give us a quick introduction. You've been there obviously since the start. Talk to me about what you do. Talk to me about your experiences there. And then I have a bucket of questions. We'll talk for about a half an hour and see where we end up.
Thank you, Chris, and a delight to be talking to you and to the audience. I'm Ram Varadarajan. I'm co-founder and CEO here at Acalvio. Acalvio is a Silicon Valley-based venture-funded company trying to solve some very significant problems in cyber defense, which we will discuss here momentarily.
Great introduction. Talk to me about deception technology. I have been a fan of deception technologies from the very, very get-go, but I think it's something that we don't talk enough about. Talk to me a little bit about that market and what makes that market tick.
Well, deception is very natural to mankind and nature. Deception was in fact invented by nature. If you look all around you, there's deception that animals, trees, everybody uses. The art of war by Sun Tzu is taught in every war college. So deception has been used in warfare, in defense, things like that, for many, many years. Because it's effective. If you can win something by deception, then you don't need to have kinetic action. So the advantages of deception have not carried over very well into IT and operational technologies. That's because there are challenges in deploying deception at scale. And so we have a very powerful tool that has been very well validated in our day-to-day lives, in nature, in militaries and things like that, but is yet to be harnessed fully to catch adversaries in the digital world. And that's what we are about to solve.
That's an awesome précis, right? I think that this is an area of cybersecurity. We talk about encryption, we talk about passwords, we talk about identity, we talk about firewalls, we talk about all this stuff. And I'm not dismissing any of those things, but deception is something that we have not talked much about. And I've always questioned why we haven't, because I know that the fact that enterprise networks are increasingly compromised and traditional security just isn't cutting it, especially with AI driven threats and so on and so forth. What do you think are some of these biggest shortcomings of the conventional cybersecurity approach, and how should we take and approach this new reality?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. It comes to the philosophy around how products are built and how defense is articulated. So, for the longest time, we have restricted ourselves to defending the perimeter and assuming that that's good enough to keep the enterprises safe. So, it's akin to putting locks on doors. So, if you can keep attackers and adversaries and bad actors outside your house, then your house should be safe. So, which is a very natural, action to take in terms of defense, whether it's physical defense or cyber defense. The problem, as you said, is that the rate at which people can cross those boundaries and come inside your enterprise is increasing at an alarming rate. And bad actors have actually weaponized AI, as you mentioned, and they have made this problem a very serious one, both in terms of severity of the attacks and the volume of attacks. So it's not like the tools of today that protect the perimeter are bad or anything of that sort. They're excellent tools and they're getting better. But there are too many ways in, and the tools cannot stop them. They are not designed to stop them. And of course, there are, I'm not even talking about 0-day errors and things like that. Those things do exist, and we'll find them at more increasing frequency. And so attackers will have a straight way into the enterprise. But there are even the way combination of tools and things like that. You cannot stop every action. And it's not possible for these tools, for today's tools, to actually infer a possible malintent just by looking at the packets that they're making a decision to allow. So attackers have learned to disguise themselves as legitimate traffic. And so once the attackers are able to fool the perimeter defenses, then it's very hard to stop them, because today's focus on cybersecurity is all about stopping attackers from getting a foothold. And that's a real problem that needs to be solved. So the defender has to be right all the time in stopping the attacker at the door, whereas the attacker needs to be only right once to get past the
That's right.
perimeter to get inside the house. And that asymmetry needs to be addressed to deal with today's cyber challenges.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And your door analogy is perfect, right? So there, you could also take a look at it from a many doors problem, in that every door is unique and every door has to be secured in a special way. And so it used to be that we had this fortress mentality, that we had one gateway in and one gateway out, and we protected that gateway with everything that we had, and we were good to go and lived happily ever after, and got gray on our beards. Nowadays, that is not the case, right? How many different entree points do you have into your various systems today? And I'll make it super simple. Let's say that you only still had on-prem, that you are that 2% of those companies that are only doing on-prem. I promise you that you still have more entree points into your environment today than you did 10 years ago. I guarantee it. I absolutely guarantee it, because you have people, remote working, you have people, VPNing in, you have whatever else. And so by its very nature, those numbers have exponentially increased. Well, then let's talk about reality for a moment. Reality will tell you that you have cloud resources, you have on-prem resources, you have SaaS services out there, all of these different capabilities that you're utilizing, which all of them are great. None of this is to dismiss any of those things. My point being is that the fortress mentality is gone. And so all as it takes for your attacker, to your point, is to find the chink in the armor of one of those entree points to be able to gain access in to at least some, if not all, of your data. So your ability to protect all of those, as many as exponential points as you have created for entree, your ability to protect those has also become exponentially more complicated. And so we need a strategy that takes advantage or really actually acknowledges that all of these entree points, all of these services, while very critical, and again, I'm not dismissing any of those, we need better security solutions to address those different entree points into your environments.
Absolutely. I mean, look, security has always been about defense in depth. So you need various signals and various defenses to counter different kinds of challenges. So nobody's advocating, of course, throwing away the locks and things like that. The more you can keep attackers out at the door, so much the better. But to your point, there are so many entryways through a door. Even if you kept the door locked, there are ways in which attackers can find a way in through windows or other openings inside the house, just to beat up an analogy. But I think the new normal is that a determined attacker will reach machine one inside an enterprise, no matter how well managed the perimeter is. I think that is the truth, and that is the reality that enterprises today need to face. If you're assuming that compromise is going to happen, then there are only two kinds of companies, as the saying goes. Ones that know that they've been attacked, and ones that don't know they've been attacked. So if an attacker is on machine one, the question is, how do you conduct your business knowing that the attacker is there? How do you get rid of the attacker quickly and easily? And remember, attackers can come from the outside, but they also can be insiders. So we need to deal with both those realities today.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So you make the assumption that the assumed breach is the new normal. And by the way, completely, absolutely agree. You can have the head in the sand mentality thinking that the one that I have heard and you have heard obviously a gazillion times is we're too small to be attacked, right? Well, that is absolute bunk. I mean, you are the favorite target of the bad guys because they're just looking to exploit, several $1,000s from you. And that pays their day salary easily, right? And you have no security. And so they're coming after you first, okay? Because if there is resistance, I may just go look for an easier target. It's just that simple. So that myth has been completely destroyed across the board. So this idea of the assumed breach becoming the new normal, I think is really important for people to understand. Talk to me a little bit about what the emerging trends or shift in cybersecurity strategy that you see is needed to address this particular mindset. Because again, you and I are in complete alignment. I think that people need to be thinking along those lines. What's some recommendations that you have?
So this assumed compromise, which is a word that I use because breach has a lot of semantics. So compromise means you may not even know the end result has not happened. The attacker has just come inside your house. And that happens to enterprises of all sizes because bad actors are after many different things, right? I mean, they may be after state secrets, they may be after enterprise secrets, they may be after ransomware, whatever the mechanism is. So nobody is safe. So its size is immaterial to the need for protection. So if you're assuming that the attacker is going to be inside and going to reach machine one, then the question is, how do you find these attackers and bad actors quickly and precisely so that you can conduct the enterprise's business in face of this reality? So that's a real challenge. And that's a problem that has been very poorly addressed so far, right? And Acalvio has promulgated the use of deception technology, which all of us know is available to be harnessed, but has been poorly used thus far. So what we have done is made deception easy to use and easy to deploy and very effective. So that's the contribution that we have brought to solving this problem of eliminating attackers once they're inside. So attackers on machine one wants to move to machines 2, 3, and 4. Our job is to intercept that quickly and precisely as early as possible. So we reduce dwell time and remedy the situation so that the enterprise is not harmed. And that requires significant innovation. So, for example, if you were to put thousands of honeypots inside an enterprise, if you went to a CFO and said, I want to put thousands of honeypots and they're going to be waiting for a bad actor to step on them, every CFO would throw you out of the room.
And rightly so, right? I mean,
Rightly so,
because that's
exactly
the
right.
thing, right?
And look, people have trouble managing real assets, real identities, and if you want to introduce fake assets and fake identities, you're increasing the complexity. So, roll your own deception is a very tough thing to do. So, what needs to be done, and honeypots have been around. There are PhD dissertations, hundreds of them written on how to build honeypots and things like that. But the reason it's been poorly used in industry is because the management, how do you keep them fresh? How do you keep them look lived in? Who will change the honey in the honey pot is been the old joke, right? I mean, so those are the kinds of practical issues. Operationalizing deception technology has been the real Achilles heel of the solution. And that's what we have solved. And that's what's enabled us to win competition, win customers, win praise from analysts, so on and so forth. So we have essentially operationalized it for enterprise scale use.
Yeah, and so Acalvio, you've been a leader in this space really from the get-go, right? You've been talking about preemptive security from the very get-go, and finally, I think deception technology is seeing its day, and it's finally starting to gain real traction. You've mentioned a couple of reasons. Talk to me more specifically. Why are we finally starting to see this technology in this space finally gaining some of the attention that it deserves?
Right. For several reasons. So this operationalizing deception is now easier to do because AI can be harnessed by Acalvio and the good guys as well. So it's easier to build decoys. It's easier to make them look real. It's easier to name deception artifacts that look blended into the environment. So it's easier to set up the deception field, if you will, because we have AI to assist the good actors. And so, in a sense, the technology tools available to build operationalized deception environments, effective deception environments are available. And Acalvio has harnessed them to make deception easy to use, easy to manage, and to be effective.
Let's unpack that for a second because I think it's worth talking about it. So everything is AI all the time. Everybody wants to talk about AI all the time, and I don't want to talk about AI all the time. But in this particular case, it does stand to be mentioned because, again, we've talked about this before. Talk to me about why the AI component of your technology isn't just some large language model wrapper around crap that doesn't really matter. You're actually taking and doing interesting and actionable things that make this technology available to the masses.
Yeah, let's take an example. A large enterprise that has 100,000 entries in their identity store, let's say Active Directory, for instance. If you want to create deception elements, fake identities, whether they're for users or machines or whatever, service accounts, whatever they are. Imagine if a human being had to go and do this inside a large enterprise, and to make it such that it looks blended into the environment, and it has the right kind of attractiveness for attackers to go and chase them. So these things are very, very difficult to do by hand, but very easy to do by AI or the right kind of AI. So those are examples of how we can make things easier to do, easier to operate. Imagine loading up fake data into a repository to make it interesting for an attacker to go and peruse through them or steal them or do whatever. So those kinds of things are all possible now with AI, and it's the harnessing of AI to make deception easy to use. That's why we call ourselves AI-powered deception. I think that's the operationalizing part that makes our solution stand out from others and previous efforts in this domain.
One of the things we don't talk about nearly enough, and we used to talk about it all the time, and it's kind of gone by the wayside. And I would like to talk about it more, and I'm going to talk about it with you, is velocity. It used to be that there was you had a time span in order to take and do the next thing, right? A 0-day attack, if you were subjected to a 0-day attack, your ability to recover or to apply patches or whatever have you for that 0-day attack, it wasn't measured in seconds. It was measured in days, sometimes even weeks, before it could realistically be a major issue for your environment. That is no longer the case. With the advent of AI and AI bots that are out there, if there is a 0-day attack, I can go buy a bot army of 1,000 bots. I can unleash that attack in a matter of moments. I can literally click a button and send out that attack across the internet almost instantaneously. The velocity to be able to initiate those kinds of attacks is something that we are not used to. Security is usually reactive. And so when you take and look at the velocity of the attackers to initiate and exploit vulnerabilities, ones that are found and ones that are known, is substantially quicker than it used to. Come back to what you were just talking about. When you start talking about the velocity, your ability to take and create a deception, environment, a honeypot, whatever have you, has been radically increased through your tools. But without that, and I speak from my own personal experience, right behind me is a rack, and in that rack is my honeypot. And people are welcome to go pound the crap out of it all the time, and they do, and it's gross. But because there is such a velocity, I end up taking and shutting it down probably 80 to 90% of the time, because I just don't have the chance to constantly update that honeypot with the latest tools, with the latest updates to keep it good. I know that if I went with Acalvio, that I would have the ability to take and update that honeypot almost automatically. I want to talk about that velocity. And are you seeing that velocity issue being a problem with a lot of your customers as well?
Absolutely. I think customers are increasingly recognizing this velocity, that time to react is very small, and the rate of infiltration is very high. So it's a double whammy in some sense. And the thing is, when you think of deception, you should think not only of honeypots, you think of honey data, honey keys, honey credentials. It's anything that can be a trap for attackers is leverageable. And the good news about harnessing AI to lay out this deception space is that we can make it attractive. We can change it to our frequently. We can adapt it to the theater of operation, because enterprise A and enterprise B don't have the same assets inside their enterprise. So this deception palette that you throw out has to be personalized to each of those environments. And all these is possible because of the AI leverage that we are bringing to the deception environment. That's what I mean by managed deception. In that kind of environment, now, and the attacker has a cost now. Once they're in machine one, they have to try to do the machine two, three, and four. They know that any false move, and they will be caught, because every option that they have to move, whether they scan or they read the local cache, or they try to use stolen credentials, things like that, all of those things could be giving up their presence. So it slows down the attacker. It allows us to divert the attacker. It allows us to buy time for response. And more importantly, it finds attackers quickly, long before they reach their destination. This is the whole reason about, you said, I like to use the word preemptive. So preemptive defense is really the name of the game. We don't want to wait till bad activities have happened and then we try to recover quickly. That's not the standard of care now. Even in ransomware, that's not the standard of care, because attackers are exfiltrating data and is leading to blackmail and things like that. So the idea is to actually be much earlier in the chain of actions and try to nip these activities much earlier in the kill chain. So that's what deception allows you to do. So when you have lateral movement, you have privilege escalation, things of that nature, you can catch them early and long before an attacker is able to conduct their ill action, we are able to stop them and get rid of them.
Yeah, I wanted to be very clear about this point because this is one of my key takeaways, that there is a fundamental disconnect about preemptive defense compared to the reactive stance and the reactive strategy that most security products are based on. And it is a fundamental shift in how you should have a cybersecurity strategy. And that's why it's worth talking about, right? And we could talk about that all day too. But when you start thinking about your cybersecurity strategy, this idea of being preemptive and instead of reactive is something that everybody ought to consider. Thinking about that a little bit, when you start thinking about preemptive defense and deception technologies over the next 3 to 5 years, how do you see them increasing in defeating these crazy AI attacks, these new emerging technology attacks? How do you see them really having that impact?
The thing is, if you sit back and think about it, there is no other good way to spot attackers early other than using deception. There is no good mechanism to effect a preemptive stand by the defender. So the defender needs some way to find the attacker before the attacker reaches their goal. And the only way to do that is to take advantage of, or take home field advantage, because the defender knows his or her enterprise. And laying out this deception fabric inside the enterprise gives the advantage finally back to the defender. And so whether you're in the cloud, whether you're an OT network, whether you're IT network, all of these places, this is a valid defense, because the cyber deception does not interfere with legitimate activities. It does not slow something down. In the Acalvio way of deploying deception, you don't have to install new agents. You don't have to change any software. So if you're using old software that cannot be changed, it doesn't matter. We are not asking anybody to change their operational things. In fact, do no harm is actually a core tenet of what we are doing. So regular operation should go completely untouched. And the deceptive artifacts that have been sprinkled inside the environment, if anybody touches them, then that's a sign that there is malicious activity. Because in regular course of action, nobody should be touching them. That's the early warning signal that there is something going on.
Yeah, and it could even be something as somebody simple, non-maliciously, mind you, somebody in your environment that has every right to be in your environment, snooping around in places that they probably shouldn't. We all know that this happens, and it a lot of times, again, it's not malicious, it's people being busybodies, because that's human nature. But all of a sudden, they stumble on something and they're snooping around. Even if no malicious action is occurring, you can at least provide greater education as to what's going on, and try to nip that problem in the bud right up before it becomes a bigger problem.
If a teller in a bank is running a network scan, that's not part of the job duties. So you know that there's something malicious going on, or at least violation of policy going on, to your point. And in which case the enterprise needs to know that, and they need to take corrective action, be that education, be that training, whatever it might be. So I think what the core point here is, reduction of dwell time is critical for defense to win in the onslaught of more and more attacks coming inside, and the ability for the attack to reach their goals quickly. They are going to act very, very quickly, and so deception is a great way to actually catch these early and get rid of them. Deception is also useful in catching, on the flip side, for cases where attackers are lying in wait, so to speak. Deception is a great way to actually ferret them out by showing shiny objects, by running new traffic in the network, things like that, that might make these malware that's sitting and waiting for a particular type of activity in order to wake up. We can actually generate those activities and actually ferret out dormant malware and things like that and get rid of them. So it works at both ends of the spectrum. It works to ferret those things out. It also helps deal with attackers early and quickly. One other last point I want to make is the precision of the response. Because deception provides such a high fidelity signal, it enables automatic response. So you can actually respond much quickly because you know for sure that there is malicious activity rather than having a suspicion that something is malicious.
I agree with everything you just said. And I know that we're wrapping up here. If there's one key takeaway or a couple key takeaways that you could take and give to those listening to this podcast today, the CISOs, the CEOs, the decision makers, so on and so forth, what would that key takeaway be?
Well, the key takeaway is that a determined attacker is going to reach machine one. Preemptive defense based on deception is a very legitimate and well understood way of solving this problem. The NSA is saying it, Gartner and you and other pundits are saying this. And for the CISOs, we want to say that the operational challenges with deception type technologies have been solved now, and there are ready to use commercial off the shelf technologies available for cloud, on-prem, IT, OT type environments. So they should actually give those things a try.
I completely agree. It has been a pleasure, as usual, taking and talking with you today. Thank you so much, Ram, for coming on. I really appreciate you speaking and sharing your insights on deception technologies. If this is a technology that you're out there and you haven't at least looked into, much less paying attention to, I would highly recommend taking and looking into it. I'm not here to promote any one particular problem. The Acalvio folks are the leaders when it comes to this stuff. Please check out their website, acalvio.com, ACALVIO.com. Make certain you take a look at them. Again, truly a pleasure to talk to you. We'll be back next week with another episode in our podcast series. Until then, make certain you subscribe to this podcast and all the major platforms and follow this conversation on our social media channels, EM360 Tech on Twitter, X, whatever they call themselves today, and on LinkedIn. And for more daily content, please head on over to em360tech.com.